welcome back to the channel everybody. Time for day 15 on Countdown to the Spectrum, and this game's a biggie. It's The Hobbit, released in 1982 by Melbourne House for £14.95. So expensive for the time, but worth it. A great game. I think most people would have played a version of this game. Now, I'm going to say a sentence that I've said a lot on these videos, but I haven't said recently, but this was a game I played to death, but on the Commodore 64. I never played it on the ZX Spectrum at all. I exclusively played this for the Commodore 64, so that's not to say that, you know, it's a totally different game. It's exactly the same game. Maybe it's slightly better looking in terms of the graphics, but from what I've seen and what I've played, the brief little bit I've played in researching and doing the video, not a lot of difference. Just obviously the Commodore 64 graphics looked a little bit more colourful, shall we say, but still this game is an absolute classic. The only problem with the fact that obviously it was released in 1982 means that it was very hard to find a review. So the review we've got isn't a very long one. It's not a colourful one by any means. It's all in black and white. There's no screenshots on it either, so it's a little bit disappointing in terms of the quality of the review, but that's just because, you know, it kind of predates the decent ones. Now, I don't know if this was the same for every version of this game, so this might have been a Commodore 64 exclusive, but I don't think it was. I always remember when we got this when I was younger, we got a copy of The Hobbit as well that came with it. I don't know if that was. Let me know in the comments if you, when you bought it, you got a copy of the book as well. That might be obviously explaining why the price was £14.95, because that would certainly explain why they charged more money. And obviously this is an adventure game, text illustrated is how it's described. So this game also released on Amstrad CPC, BBC Micro, Commodore 64, and Commodore Plus 4, which was unofficial apparently, and MSX. So plenty of platforms there, so I'm sure lots of you have played this game, you know, because not everybody had a Spectrum, not everybody had a Commodore 64 or a BBC or an Amstrad, but a lot of times people had at least one of those, didn't they? So, you know, I'm sure there's plenty of people that have played a version of this game. It got second place in CMVG 1983 Golden Joysticks Awards Game of the Year, and it ranked first in 1984 Sinclair User Top 50 Spectrum Software Classics. I'm sure it was a little booklet, because I remember having that. I've got it somewhere still. I've kept it. Might actually go through that on camera one day, because it'll be interesting to have a look at that book if I can dig it out from somewhere. I think I know where it is in this house full of stuff, but yeah, I got that little booklet. I'm sure that's what that is. And winner of the CMVG 1983 Golden Joysticks Awards Best Strategy Game. And it says Review Awards ZX Computing Globella. There was some known errors on this game though, so there we go. It says the original version of 1.1 of the game, it was impossible to kill the dragon. That's because you couldn't go east from the town in the middle of Long Lake. This has been corrected in version 1.2, mine. Sounds like it was a slight fault in the routine where you must ask Elrond to read a map for you, and the route he tells you about is only actually filled in on the map at that point. If you don't have him read the map to you, then the route won't exist. The way to spot the difference between the versions is that the names of the programmers have been added on the loading screen for 1.2. Okay, that's interesting. Well, that would be good, isn't it, if we boot up the Spectrum and it's version 1.1 of the game. Could you imagine? We'll all be checking that first up, won't we? I'm sure we wouldn't have that. They must have tested and retested. Oh, it does say on here, remarks, ZXSR originally came with the book, also reissued at £9.95 without the book. Okay, there we go. So that's interesting. This was the first Spectrum game to ever sell 1 million copies. Veronica, who's one of the programmers, remembers it was never released in the US because some company owned the rights to the pictures and wouldn't let us license it there. On the funny side, in a pre-release version, I'd written in an angry dwarf that kept trying to kill you, and if you did something, I don't remember what, it became a randy dwarf and kept following you around and propositioning you. But Fred and Phil decided that was a little too much and made me take it out again. That's a funny comment, that is. Well, that would have been a slightly different game, wouldn't it, if that was the case. So we all know this kind of adventure. It's the sort of adventure game where you type in a direction or you type in a use item command or whatever, and it will tell you, you know, it will talk back to you and say, yeah, you know, you head east or you head west or blah, 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 or you use the ring or whatever, do you know what I mean? And it draws a picture of every location that comes up. So it's an amazing game, and I love adventure games like this. These were the essence of early computing, weren't they, when you wanted to play an adventure game? It's before we got point and click adventures and that. These were the staple. The Hobbit is an absolute classic for sure. So we've got this mini review to read. It's a shame it's just such a small... Well, it's going to be a bit of reading here. I only picked this one because it had a mark on it as such, which was great. As you can see, there's an Incredible Hulk review next to it that got Grim. So basically, great must be the top mark. Grim was the other one. Anyway, let's have a little look here. They said £9.95 for the price, so they must have got the one without the book then. Oh, they explain that in the thing actually. Here we go. It says, when The Hobbit first first came out, I was not as amazed as all of the reviews at the time. In fact, I disliked the game. I was unimpressed by the independent characters, all that Thorin sits down and sings about gold rubbish, and I objected to some of the hefty £14.95, which seemed vastly expensive when compared with an average £5 per cassette at the time, paying for a book which I, like many other people, already owned. Since then, I have become an adventure reviewer and know what makes a good game. The ridiculous hype has died down, and I can appreciate the programme's good points, which are numerous. Furthermore, I can review it honestly without being in awe. That said, it's deservedly a classic and the game responsible for introducing so many people to the wonderful world of adventures. Yeah, definitely agree with that. It's the first one I ever played, that is for sure. The programme has aged remarkably well. Oh yeah, this review, by the way, to interrupt myself, there was in 1986, so 4 years after the game was released. Is why they're talking about it in the past tense, obviously, a lot. The game has aged remarkably well. Its speed and presentation still compare favourable with anything on the market, as does the friendly vocabulary and responsive and helpful replies. The graphics are variable, some duff, some still good, but none really poor. They tend to improve the further you progress. The location descriptions are far briefer than I remembered, perhaps too short by today's standards. However, with all the messages and characters wandering around, there remains a reasonable amount to be read. The game has some lovely and now classic puzzle. You haven't lived until you've escaped the Goblin's dungeon. Another admirable feature that is rare even today is that many problems can be solved in a variety of ways, as can the game itself. Gaining the treasure is by no means the sole task. This helps add realism to the computer-controlled world, and I began to see what everyone was raving about. Character interaction is a vital part of the game and well handled, though not so mind-boggling these days. What did happen, by the way, to the other 12 dwarfs? In many respects, I prefer this to the first Lord of the Rings game. The Hobbit has nothing like the complexity, but is much more enjoyable to play, and I feel it captures the atmosphere of the book better. No photographs or heavy metal here. Then again, The Hobbit is a far less complicated story. The only real problem is the price. I would have thought past sales would have paid for The Hobbit's development many times over by now. Yet at £10 is virtually nothing more expensive. Considering the book is no longer included, its price has hardly changed. I'm sure some shops have been selling The Hobbit off as old stock for much less and at a mid-budget price of £5. Or as one of Elite's classics, this would be a monster hit. As it stands, I would say it's still worth playing, but make your own judgment as to whether it's the best use for your adventuring budget. Well, of course we don't have to worry about how much it costs, do we? So we're getting it included, and they're saying it's still worth playing even at that price. Well, we don't have to worry about price, do we? So I'm sure everybody out there's played this game. This is one of the few games that I did actually play all the way to completion. Me and my brother, we were just absolutely obsessed with this. My dad too, because it was on the Commodore 64. I've explained the story in previous videos. If this is your first video of mine, I'll say it again. My parents got divorced when I was very young. My dad bought us a Commodore 64 in 1983. It was the first computer I ever owned. In fact, he bought my first gaming system for us before that, which was an Intellivision, and then we kind of upgraded to the Commodore 64. I got my ZX Spectrum in 85. Well, my mum got it for us actually, so that was kind of like why I was probably playing more games first on the Commodore 64 than the Spectrum at the beginning of the life cycle, because that's what we had, you know, until December 1985 when we got our Spectrum. And then I graduated to playing them more on the Spectrum because, you know, I only saw my dad every couple of weeks, so, you know, I didn't get to play the Commodore 64 as much. I had the Spectrum at my house and we played it a lot. But games like The Hobbit, obviously, as they were saying at that time, was quite pricey, and obviously as I already owned it on the Commodore 64, there wasn't really the need to buy it again on the Spectrum. But it was a game that we absolutely loved playing. It was awesome, and I didn't really know the story either back then. The book seemed a bit too complicated for me to read at the age of about 9, so I didn't read the book when I first got a copy of it. I've since read it. I read it at school, you know, read it afterwards, but at the age of 9 or 10 it was probably a bit too much for me. I got to know more about the Hobbit story probably from playing this game than I did actually from reading the book. So when I went to watch the movies like years later, like when the more recent ones they made, everything that I remembered about The Hobbit I remembered from this game rather than the book, you know. So it was really cool. Yeah, I absolutely love this game. 2 bits. It's still right up there probably as one of my favourite adventure games of all time. I do like the point and click adventure, so it moved on to things like Monkey Island, Indiana Jones, that sort of thing, being up there as my favourites. But going back to this style of adventure, this and Gremlins on the ZX Spectrum was probably 2 of my favourite adventure games of all time. I don't think there's been many better than this, personally. Certainly not in my opinion anyway. I absolutely love it. As ever, I would love to hear your stories when you played it. Sort of, did you get the version with the book? Did you get the version without a book? You know, do you remember that? Still got the book somewhere in this house. I know I've got it somewhere because my dad didn't need the copy of it. I think he had the set, like the trilogy books and all the rest of it. So he just let us take it back home with us, and I think I kept it. I'm pretty sure. In fact, as soon as I finish recording this video, I'm going to go out to where my books are and see if I've got it out there, because just for a bit of nostalgia. But that'll be fun if it's out there. But yeah, I remember it so fondly, and I got a lot of memories of this, and I'm so glad they included it with the system. And it's great, isn't it? Because we got a keyboard. You know, normally when you get these, like with the A500 Mini, you have to attach your own keyboard, but for this one, we've got a working keyboard. It's going to be great to replay this. I cannot wait. Okay, everybody, thank you so much once again for watching. Day 15 in the can. Tomorrow, day 16. Day 16, oh my word. We are less than a week away when tomorrow rolls around. Today, we are a week away. So I should have probably said that already, but I got carried away because this is one of my favourite games. So, yeah, forgive me that. But yeah, we're a week away today. So less than a week when tomorrow's video drops. Unbelievable. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Take care. See you soon. Bye for now.